Hey guys, hope you guys are doing well. We miss you very much. We cannot wait for things to get back to normal so we can go back to school and pick up where we all left off from. Guys, I hope you guys are practicing your social distancing and making sure that you are washing your hands. And also one important quick reminder that you all are completing your e-learning packets. I hope you guys are completing your e-learning packets. That is very important. You guys are just in time today. I am getting ready to read one of my favorite stories. As you can see, the story is called Henry's Freedom Box, a true story from the Underground Railroad. Henry's Freedom Box, a true story from the Underground Railroad. And before we begin reading, I want you guys to pay attention to to the cover of the book. I want you to look at the pictures on the cover. Why do you think the illustrator included these things in the picture? Give you a good view there. And Henry's Freedom Box is written by Ellen Levine, illustrated by Kadir Nelson. Also, guys, this is an accelerated reader book. I will put the code, have the code listed for you so you can take your AR test. Remember that you can still take your AR tests. Henry's Freedom Box. Henry Brown wasn't sure how old he was. Henry was a slave, and slaves weren't allowed to know their birthdays. I wonder why slaves weren't allowed to know their birthdays. Do you know? Henry and his brothers and sisters worked in the big house where the master lived. Henry's master had been good to Henry and his family, but Henry's mother knew things could change. Do you see those leaves blowing in the wind? They are torn from the trees like slave children are torn from their families. Why does Henry's mom say that about slave children, that they're like the leaves blowing in the wind? Why do you think so? What do you think? One morning, the master called for Henry and his mother. They climbed the wide staircase. The master lay in bed with only his head above the quilt. He was very ill. He beckoned them to come closer. Come closer. Come closer. Come closer, guys. Some slaves were freed by their owners. Henry's heart beat fast. Boom, 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 boom. Maybe the master would set him free? But the master said, "You're a good worker, Henry. I am giving you to my son. You must obey him and never tell a lie." Henry nodded, but he didn't say thank you. That would have been a lie. How do you think Henry might have felt? I guess he wanted his master to set him free. That's what I think. What do you guys think? Later that day, Henry watched a bird soar high above the trees. Free bird, happy bird, Henry thought. Why do you think Henry made that reference to the birds? Does he want to be like the birds? Henry said goodbye to his family. He looked across the field. The leaves swirled in the wind. Leaves swirled in the wind. Why do you think the author tells us about the leaves here? Why do you think? Henry worked in his new master's factory. He was good at his job. "Do not tear that tobacco leaf," the boss yelled at the new boy. He poked the boy with a stick. If you made a mistake, the boss would beat you. Henry was lonely. One day, he met Nancy, who was shopping for her mistress. They walked and talked and agreed to meet again. Henry felt like singing, but slaves didn't dare sing in the streets. Instead, he hummed all the way home. And guys, a mistress is their master's wife, a slave master's wife. Months later, Henry asked Nancy to be his wife. When both their masters agreed, Henry and Nancy were married. Soon, there was a little baby, then another, and another. Henry knew they were very lucky. They lived together even though they had different masters. But Nancy was worried. Her master had lost a great deal of money. "I'm afraid he'll sell our children," she said. Henry sat very still. Do you guys think that the master might sell their children? I hope not. Henry worked hard all morning. He tried to forget what Nancy had said. Do you guys think Henry looks happy here? Why or why not? Look at this picture. Does he look happy? What do you guys think he's worried about if he's not happy? And if he's happy, what do you think he's happy about? His friend James came into the factory. He whispered to Henry, "Your wife and children were just sold at the slave market." "No!" cried Henry. Henry couldn't move. He couldn't think. He couldn't work. "Twist that tobacco," the boss poked Henry. Henry twisted tobacco leaves, but his heart twisted in his chest. His heart twisted in his chest. What type of figurative language is that? Did his heart really twist in his chest? At lunchtime, Henry rushed to the center of town. A large group of slaves was tied together. The owner shouted at them. Henry looked for his family. "Father! Father!" Henry watched his children disappear down the road. Where was Nancy? He saw her the same moment she saw him. When he wiped away his tears, Nancy too was gone. Wow. So Henry lost both his children and his wife. I could imagine how Henry was probably feeling then. Probably not good. Henry no longer sang. He couldn't hum. He went to work, and at night he ate supper and went to bed. Henry tried to think of happy times, but all he could see were the carts carrying away everyone he loved. Henry knew he would never see his family again. Why do you think Henry couldn't hum or sing anymore? And how would you feel if you couldn't see your family anymore? Mr. Green wouldn't like that at all. I'd be sad, very, very sad. Many weeks passed. One morning, Henry heard singing. A little bird flew out of a tree into the open sky, and Henry thought about being free. But how? As he lifted a crate, he knew the answer. He asked James and Dr. Smith to help him. Dr. Smith was a white man who thought slavery was wrong. They met early the next day at an empty warehouse. Henry arrived with a box. I'll mail myself to a place where there are no slaves, he said. James stared at the box, then at Henry. What if you cough and someone hears you? I'll cover my mouth and hope, Henry said. Dr. Smith wrote on the box, to William H. Johnson, Arch Street, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Henry would deliver it to friends in Philadelphia. Then he printed on the crate in big letters, this side up with care. Henry needed an excuse to stay home, or the work boss would think he had run off. James pointed to Henry's sore finger, but Henry knew it wasn't bad enough. He opened a bottle of oil of vitriol. No, cried James. Henry poured it on his hand. It burned his skin to the bone. Now the boss would have to let him stay home. Dr. Smith bandaged Henry's hand, and they arranged to meet the next morning at 4 o'clock. Ouch. The sun was not up yet when Henry climbed into the box. Ready? He said. James nailed down the lid. Dr. Smith and James drove to the station. The railway clerk tipped the box over and nailed a paper to the bottom. Dr. Smith begged the clerks to be careful, but they didn't listen. They threw the box into the baggage car. If you were James, how would you be feeling at this very moment in the box? That would be very scary, wouldn't it? Hours passed. Henry was lifted up and thrown again, upside down. He heard waves splashing. This must be the steamboat headed for Washington, D.C. The ship rode smoothly, but Henry was still upside down. Blood rushed to his head. His face got hot. His eyes ached. He thought his head would burst, but he was afraid to move. Someone might hear him. Someone might hear him. What do you guys think if someone had heard Henry? Do you think it would have been a good thing or a bad thing might happen? I'm tired of standing, someone said. Why don't we move that box and sit on it, said another. Henry held his breath. Could they be talking about his box? Henry was pushed. The box scraped the deck. Now he was on his right side. Now on his left. And suddenly right side up. What do you think is in here? Said the first man. Mail, I guess, said the other. I am mail, thought Henry, but not the kind they would imagine. Henry was carried off the steamboat and placed in a railroad car, this time head up. He fell asleep to the rattling song of the train wheels. He awoke to loud knocking. "Henry, are you all right in there?" "All right," he answered. The cover was pried open. Henry stretched and stood up. 4 men smiled at him. "Welcome to Philadelphia." At last, Henry had a birthday, March 30th, 1849, his first day of freedom. And from that day on, he also had a middle name. What do you guys think his middle name might be? Let's see. Everyone called him Henry Box Brown. The end. I hope you guys enjoyed this story as much as I did. I want to return back to the front cover, and let's look at the front again. Is there anything that you notice now that you didn't before when we first looked at the cover before we read the story? What do you guys think that the birds and the trees without leaves stand for? Now that we have read the story, what do you guys think that the trees without leaves stand for, and the birds? Until next time, guys. See you later.